Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
Changes Unspun.
Brought your Bowie in there.
Little Bowie, little Britishness there, obviously. You know, big day sad day for Amanda, especially my partner who's British, English, UK, whatever you call them, UKer.
I texted her right away. I texted her right away as soon as I heard the news. She was one of the first people that I thought of, honestly. But she went for the anniversary of the coronation,
she did.
Right?
The 70th celebration.
Jubilee.
Jubilee, and you know, it's funny because I woke up early at around 5:30, and I saw what was going on, and I'm like, she was asleep, and I thought, and I kind of wanted to wake her up, but I was like, it was really early, and as soon as I woke her up about an hour, I said, so yeah, I sort of wake you up with this, but it doesn't look good for the Queen. And she was like, bling! She like jumps out of bed and goes to turn the TV on. And she used to work as a journalist in the UK. And so her take on this is always very interesting because there's a whole protocol from a journalist point of view that you follow and that you get all these, you know, it's a while ago for her, but it's still, you know, some of the process is all very strict and there are warning signs that you get. As we learned, I think you may have seen, all the monarchs have nicknames that are named after bridges. And so if you get something as a journalist that, London Bridge is, falling down, that's so these are signals to the journalist generally that something's going on. But it wasn't until, we saw the flag go half-mast and we saw that happening. She was actually in a client meeting and that we couldn't get out of, and she was like turning off her camera because she was watching the news at the same time, trying to see it, and it happened right in the middle of the client meeting. So she's like, I know.
I gotta say, in our unspun mantra, I had a moment. I'm not a really huge royal watcher per se. That said, I love the Queen, and that's not that I love the monarchy. It's that what Queen Elizabeth II has represented for my entire life as a 55-year-old woman. When I was just a baby, she was having a 30-pound crown put on her head. And I don't know what you were doing at 26, but I certainly was, or 25. I was not being coronated.
No, I was drunk at a bar in some city somewhere in the world at that point. Yeah, and it's, I had two brush-ins with the Queen. I'm not sure. I had one brush-in with Princess Di and Prince Charles at Expo. They walked right past me. Yeah. But I had two drive-bys with the Queen. One was when I was a kid, and she came to Vancouver, and my parents were huge monarchists, and so we went to watch her. She must have been, I was only like, it was like 1971. So I was like 6 or 7. And she was coming, I think she must have been coming from the airport because we were on Oak Street in Vancouver. And we watched her drive by, and she was in a Cadillac convertible in the back, and we were like waving. I think I've got a picture of it. I should find it, and of her driving by. And so that was the first time I met her. And then, interestingly, a couple of years later, that car, my dad was looking for a car, and he was at a dealership, and it was a Cadillac convertible, and he couldn't afford it, but it was for sale, and it had the plaque in it saying this car was driven by, with the Queen in it. He's like, I really want this car. Wow. It's a Cadillac, and the Queen sat in it, but he didn't get it. And then the second time was when I was in London in '86, at Christmas '86, and I was just wandering around. It was a rainy, day in December in London. I just kind of wandered up to the Buckingham Palace, and I'm like checking it out, and I'm like, and then the gates open. It was pouring with rain. I was all by myself there. Like, there's no other tourists, and the gates open. And I look, and it's this car drives out, and in car driving it by herself was the Queen. And I'm like,
no way.
Like, hi. I just kind of, and she waves back at me. I'm like, did anybody else? Nobody else saw that. She's just driving off for a little tour.
That's the greatest story of all time. Are you kidding me right now?
No, it's weird. Yeah, that happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Wow. Full disclosure, I had no idea that was coming. That's an awesome story, George. You got to tell that on the radio. That's so cool. Well, I guess you kind of did. It's a podcast radio.
That's right.
Podcast.
Tune in to.
So how do you feel? How do you feel about this I want to say
the
tragic,
losses.
terrible, but 96. I mean, I still feel though that we've lost something.
Young. I thought she'd have another 10 years because her mom lived till she was 102. I thought, we got another 10 years of this. But so it was quite surprising. My son was on CTV National. He was in Ottawa getting
I saw that.
And his quote was quite good about, a legacy, and it was quite good. I tweeted it out if people want to check it out at my Twitter, which is George _. I did it this time.
You did it. Affleck.
Yours is
at George. At Jody.
Vance. We're going to talk more about Twitter.
Jody Vance.
I will say I was in a meeting before this. We're recording on Fridays now. And so I was in a meeting, and this show is called UnSpun. I want to talk to you. First of all, there are, the process I just talked about that Amanda used to go through as a journalist, that whole thing, the whole protocols are so strict. But the Queen, from a public relations point of view, and spin, and the number of times she's had to kind of almost reinvent herself or become, she was distant in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then with Diana, they had to kind of embrace the people more. And, there's those documentaries of her laughing and gambling at a horse race. And they really making her more of a people person over the years.
And showing her driving herself and the corgis that
exactly,
she owned,
the corgis,
and the horse that has
conscientious,
a lineage back to Canada.
Yeah, conscious PR strategy, spinning, trying to make her
firm,
real.
Right?
Yeah, and so it worked. The firm, that's right. But it worked. You saw Prince Charles. So now, and I saw him before I left this morning. He was doing the handshaking on the street.
Yeah,
as he was making his way to Buckingham Palace, and then I know he held a press conference. And so, how did that go? I didn't get a chance to see it. I'll see it later, I'm sure.
I walked in. I had just done another podcast that I had to go downtown this morning to do, and I walked in the door and I sat down and I turned on, literally just flipped on the TV, and it was happening. Sat myself down and just took it in. So I wasn't waiting for it. I didn't have a lot of, as soon as he speaks, we'll take you there live. There was none of that. It was just boom. And so I was really taken in. And I felt the royal tone, the history, and the handing down of, that role. King Charles III. I mean, the lineage and how he spoke of his beloved mama, and how, she's with papa now, and really spoke about her, which I thought, the way he talked, it was clear how much he loved and loves his mother.
Right.
And he ensured that in all of the noise of what is happening now, as he's addressing the world, I mean, here we are, the King's speech, literally. It felt to me perfect pitch. He touched on some of the realities of the monarchy in 2022, reaching out to the Commonwealth, reaching out to the world, really, and trying to be the unifier, talking about the traditions that his mother has always held central to who she is. There's a lot there. I really do encourage everyone to find a way to watch that speech in its entirety. And I was surprised, as he mentioned, obviously, William and Kate, the fact that William is now the Prince of Wales, she the Princess of Wales. And he also made mention of Harry and Meg and wished them well overseas. You don't like them?
I just think they're opportunists at the worst level. Yeah. He was, I hear, according to Amanda, my best source for all things British, he was invited to see her on his trip that his hat was on in the UK. He declined to visit her, and now she's dead.
What?
So, good job, Harry. He's too busy writing his tell-all book, which comes out very soon, about his life as a monarch. These guys, come on. She's got the number one podcast, though, right?
True.
She's got the number one podcast.
I mean,
but yeah, no, it's
I hope that's not true. That he said he couldn't go see her.
True. I mean, of course it's true. God, what a guy.
That makes me sick to my stomach. I wear my grandmother's ring. I cannot imagine the last interaction with my grandmother being, I don't have time for you. No.
Yeah. No, I know. It's your grandmother. So who cares if it's anyways, are my audio levels okay? I'm looking at the thing here. It sounds okay because I'm looking at my little schmingle here and it looks like I'm low. We got a complaint on Twitter about my levels. So
I'm not yelling, you're yelling.
Yeah. Here's the other thing about this, just to wrap up the old the Queen thing here, was the response by the new Prime Minister of England, Liz Truss, and the response by our Prime Minister, which I thought was very emotional. And I thought it was very good. He has a lifetime of experience with her. But then there was this new Prime Minister, literally the last person, certainly last dignitary, last important person to see her alive. 3 days ago, 2 days before she died.
48 hours. Yeah. 48
hours. Her speech was pathetic. It was terrible. It was, it could be her undoing. It was so bad. There was you literally could have just said, I was last, and she didn't even say I was the last person to, I had the opportunity. I'm the last Prime Minister to ever see the Queen, and then when I met her, blah, 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 something, give me something here. I thought, who manages that? That just makes her look so cold. We already know she's because of her history, an anti-monarchist. But that was just like, come on. Come on.
That was next level. I don't like it. But how did you see the leader, the Prime Minister here reacted? I kind of thought the emotion of his, it almost felt unscripted. When he said,
he was crying.
It's odd to me that that it feels. I can't remember the exact wording, but basically he said, I find it hard to believe that my last interaction with her was my last. He hadn't really thought it through enough other than just to say it as it is. Like, we all need to,
what you should do,
have that be our reminder with any interaction with the people that we care about or people that are important to us, what have you, is that you just never know when it's the last time you're going to interact with someone. And I thought that was, I don't know. I guess this woman really, truly has brought out the best in so many people, because it's hard to say something negative about someone who, while not perfect by any stretch, and certainly the people that were coming at the monarchy and the whole royal, colonization, that is a separate conversation. The person is who I'm talking about right now. This young woman, as a young person, all the way through to, has given her entire life to be a uniter, and there's something about that going through. I'll never forget where I was on September 8th. Let me tell you, because we had a full show planned to premiere Steele and Vance, and we were going through what's happening.
Of course.
Where we know where we're starting.
You launched your show yesterday, and of course, I didn't even think about it. You had to redo your whole intro.
I said, drive that apple cart right to the center of this. Talk about it. We just didn't. We didn't. Absolutely. Nothing in that show is written down. So, we just were having conversations.
It's like you got to pivot, and
it was a pivot.
Yeah. Wow. Anyways, good show, by the way. I watched it. Congratulations on the launch of Steele and Vance on Check TV. For those who are listening and watching, tune in every Thursday at 8:00. It's good. It's fun. You guys were fun. You had Jan Arden on, and shoes. I saw some nice shoes.
Lots about the shoes. We have fun with the shoes and our clothes.
How come I don't get some shoes?
You could get some shoes. Local. Twist and Lord Shoes are both women-owned local businesses, long-time local businesses, which we love. Let's talk local. Let's talk local politics.
Local. Nice segue.
Into the YVR election.
Vancouver. Yes. Well, we got some polling out this week from Mario Canseco at Research Co. Interesting. 35% for the current mayor, Kennedy-Stewart, and 30% for Ken Sim and ABC. So really, the mayor's holding his own. But Ken Sim he's not skyrocketing, and Colleen Hardwick's numbers have gone down, I think, since the last one. And I saw that Mark Marison's have gone up a little bit. NPA is in the tank with John Cooper leaving, and this new guy who's in all sorts of messy trouble related to all sorts of stuff he said in the past. I don't want to get into it. It's like there are, 4%, I think they're at.
It's a debacle. It's a debacle.
It's a debacle from top to bottom. So, it's a two-person race.
There's a reason why everybody left that ship, for sure. We're seeing that. So let's go. It's a two-person race. So basically you prophesized way back when, way over here on UnSpun Podcast, yet again, you're being set up to be right.
Well, it's a bit, Kennedy-Stewart hasn't even started his campaign. We're on September 9th.
Silent.
Ken Sim's been running ads. Because I was on CKNW, I heard them all the time, every half hour, an ad slamming, the mayor about this road levies, tax, whatever you want to call it. And, I asked, and it's an interesting challenge and then you have Colleen Harvick. So in the last election, I've talked about this, we had Ken Sim and Kennedy-Stewart. So it's a rematch, but you had Shauna Sylvester as an independent who definitely was to the left of the spectrum. So would have been perceived as more competitive and hurtful to Kennedy-Stewart than Ken Sim, but she did take votes away from Ken Sim for sure, probably about 10,000 votes. She had 35,000 votes. So, and I've talked about this before, there's this 35,000 votes up for grabs. They're not going for Colleen Harvick, I don't think. So those votes are likely going to go, and so they're, where will they go? Where will they go? And in this anti-road tax campaign, which is in principle, actually for Vancouverites could be quite good if you look at it as far as the environment and getting cars off the roads or making people drive other kinds of cars or whatever, and a good potential tax base, but also impossible to actually implement as a city. So it's whatever. But I worry, and I tweeted this out this morning, I think Ken Sim has to be careful about that one. He's definitely made it his number one issue against the current mayor, and that the mayor is lying and he's going to bring in this tax, maybe. But you have to think about, and we talk about this, the mushy middle, as I call it, the centrists, the progressives, as I put quote marks around it, because, progressives, what's a progressive? Yeah, but what's a progressive? I mean, progressive conservative, that's a thing. It was a party. It's
There's
really
fiscally conservative.
Yeah, socially progressive.
Left-leaning people, right? So
that's right. So
that's the mushy middle.
I'm worried that if I was giving him advice, I'd say you got to be careful with this anti-road tax thing. Remember bike lanes? How NPA just branded? I mean, apparently I hate bike lanes. Anybody with the NPA hates bike lanes. And a lot of those people in the center are like, well, bike lanes are pretty good. And I kind of like bike lanes. So what's the deal with this party that hates bike lanes? Same with this tax. Like, a lot of people are going, well, I want the environment's pretty important to me. And are you saying if you don't support this tax, does that mean you don't really support the environment? That's the spin I bet you'll see Kennedy-Stewart pivoting to and saying, all right, ABC and Ken Sim, so you hate the environment. You don't want to save save the earth. You don't want to just let us all die. What are you going to do? What's your solution for decreasing greenhouse gas emissions in Vancouver? Show us. He'll push that angle, and that will make that mushy middle, that centrist, those federal liberals in Vancouver go, where am I going to put my vote? The Shauna Sylvester votes, where are they going to go? Are they going to go for Ken Sim, make himself look like a moderate, at the same time as saying, I don't want this tax. It's, for the environment.
But I tell you what, I think the mushy middle, because I agree with everything you're saying. You're much more savvy to this as a former politician yourself. Mm-hmm. But the distaste of the state of this town right now, the city of Vancouver, how poorly it has been managed through these last number of years, cannot be undone with a slogan. For me, the mushy middle. Yeah. And that's not to say that any of the candidates can fix it. It's so far down a broken path that, frankly, there's much about what's broken here that can't be green and fixed, because it's going to take significant disruption and upheaval to fix the sewer lines, to build up the seawalls. Are you seeing the waves crash on the seawalls? We're in the summertime. This isn't even a winter storm, and we're coming apart at the seams because our infrastructure can't take the climate change. We can't just, we'll just hold where we are and hope the climate change doesn't hurt us. We're going to have to actually take some serious, that's the thing that bothers me as a fiscally conservative, progressive, mushy middle type, is I want somebody who's actually speaking to where we are right now and where we have to go. Not, well, they say they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And I'm dissatisfied with everybody. I actually, right in this moment, I never talk about how I vote publicly as somebody who gives their opinion on air. People tag me as you're NPA or you're the liberal, you're the whatever. You're all wrong. Because I'm the undecided. And George, I think this close to this municipal election, there are a lot of undecided people, but undecided and motivated to get to to get to the ballot box. So my big thing right now is know your candidate. You have to figure out who you're voting for.
I agree with that. I don't agree with the motivation. I think there's absolute demotivation. There's nobody who's happy with any of these people, and they're not going to show up because they're like, meh, they won't care. They don't care.
If you don't vote.
I know. I'm just saying this is a fact. This is what I believe is going to happen. Yeah. We'll see the same or worse turnout in this election. And I think that, and as you saw that poll again from Mayor Conseco, what's the number one issue? What's the number one issue for this election by people that he polled? Housing.
Affordability. Yeah.
Housing. And you're like, oh my God, it's not something we can solve.
Here we are again. Homelessness was ending 20 years ago, guys. We were going to get rid of,
It's so, and this will be what it comes down to. That's what people are, when they go vote, they're going to say, what's the party that's going to be about housing? Well, that's Mark Marison, I guess. He's the one who's saying, I'm just going to, actually, one city, we're going to build everything. Just tear everything down and rebuild.
Build everything everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
But then we do get some of the ABC stuff. That's right. ABC is the Ken Sim party, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I get them confused.
That, by the way, that exactly is a challenge right there. That is a challenge. Yeah, you can sit there and spend $1 million, but most people aren't like us. They're not paying attention. What is this ABC?
Agreed.
Who's ABC? They're going to show up in that booth. I remember Ken Sim, but ABC, what is that?
He's throwing some meat out there, though, with the press releases. I got one that's like, we are going to make responsible alcohol consumption in parks legal permanently in all parks in the city of Vancouver.
Yes.
Got that press release, right?
Okay. You think that's progressive or you think that's conservative, though? Who do you think supports that?
The mushy middle.
No.
Stop policing us for doing what we're already doing.
Surprisingly.
You're not the mushy middle and I am. So I'm putting that out there in my
Vision
opinion.
hated that idea. Vision, which would be the mushy middle, their people hated that idea.
But I don't think I'm busy. I wasn't Vision.
No, I know. But I'm just saying that I don't think that's I know your argument is that that's a mushy middle thing. I don't think it is, actually. I think it's also.
I think that's something that will get people out to vote. I think that people were pissed off enough while out in COVID, sitting at a park, not allowed to go to a restaurant, picked up the takeout, tipped big for the people, trying to keep it all going, met with their people responsibly outside, and had some bylaw officer roll by on a four-wheeler and take away your 3 cans of Pilsner.
I wanted that to happen to me. I was walking around holding bottles of wine high, hoping that would happen to me because I wanted to film it. Oh, makes me so mad. Don't get me started on that.
Don't even get me started. Okay, let me get you started on something else because I actually thought about you. I mean, we're going to talk about John Horgan and some of the relief he handed out. But before we get to Horgan, as somebody who has traveled through the Massey Tunnel for most of my life, I moved to Tsawwassen when I was 10 years old and moved into the city after I graduated at 18. And in the in-between time, I commuted through the Massey Tunnel. And my very first column for the Orca that I ever wrote was about how terrifying it is to go through that tube regularly. It's awful. And that Kevin Falcon, the new, I guess we can drop new at this point, the BC Liberal leader did a photo op ribbon cutting at what would have been the opening of the bridge that the NDP canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Smart. Clever.
Good political move.
Very good.
I thought of you right away.
Yeah, totally. Very clever. Just brings out like, oh my God, what is this? What has the NDP done in their 7 years now in office? 6 years? What does it mean? I don't even know. 2017. What year are we in? So 5 years. Anyways, it's been like, except add taxes and deal with COVID, which we can argue they did a good job with that with Bonnie Henry giving her the power. Unless you hate what Bonnie Henry does, and I'm sure there's lots of those out there.
I liked it. Carry on.
I know. But beyond, and of course, COVID created all sorts of other headaches. But basically, we have a healthcare crisis. We have so many crises right now in this province, and all I seem to be doing is paying more taxes.
Yeah, Patello Bridge closes in a windstorm. Massey Tunnel's still nothing. We're just spending money putting lipstick on that pig, and it's dangerous as all get out. It's awful. It's horrible.
I brought this up last time, and I want a journalist, somebody out there to do the data on this, Justin McElroy, of the decision to close, not to build that bridge now, which would have opened, and the decision to take the tolls off the bridges. This has caused. I want the data on GHG emissions, how much more greenhouse gas is emitted because of that decision, and I want to know how many people have died or have been hurt in a significant way because of the traffic that's increased on those bridges and
the unsafe nature of the traffic flow, for sure.
Yeah. These are two things that, if you care about the people you represent, shouldn't you care about lives lost and our environment? Yes. Isn't that your role as a government? Yes. I would say then that the NDP are being irresponsible in those two categories by not building that bridge and by getting rid of tolls. And I don't care what you feel about tolls. They're effective in slowing down traffic and in reducing traffic and keeping control of traffic. So, and if you have people not speeding and people not, and people driving less, the math is simple. Anyways, I thought that was a good.
Justin McElroy can do some charts for us. He doesn't work for us. He works for CBC, but he's a great follow. I enjoy that. Let's talk about the relief that has been proposed by the Premier. The announcement made this week.
I'm spinning my chair right now. Well, relief, whatever. I talk about the rent controls, or you want to talk about the other one? The only one I care about is this rent control that they've now made permanent. They say it's for a year. Come on, we're stuck with this rent control until they're gone. And rent controls. I lived in Sweden. Let me give you a little idea of what it's like when you have long-term rent controls in Sweden, where I lived for over a year. We couldn't find an apartment to live in. But, there certainly were a lot of apartments to rent. I mean, sub-rent. You had to sublet these apartments from people you maybe knew that was all in the black market that were renting for twice the market value, 3 times the market value, under the table, completely hidden. Sometimes the landlords didn't even know that the place was being sublet. And sometimes that subletter would sublet as well. So the landlords were had no idea sometimes who was living in their apartments because people were totally scamming it because rent controls, and they frankly didn't care because they couldn't upkeep their buildings because they couldn't make any money. And so you have this is what happens. You discourage the taking care of buildings,
development,
and you discourage the development of buildings. It's a stupid thing to do.
I'll say the upside of what I do know about what is being put on the table by the provincial government is the child tax credit increase for families that need it. I got my $111 check from ICBC. I didn't need it. I don't. Luckily, thankfully, I have enough. I have enough food in the fridge. I have enough gas in my car. But there are people who don't. And there's a way to help people who don't. There's a way to make life easier for people under a certain income. Let's just, and that's the way I think. I'm happy to give more. And I know you and I have talked about this before. Barry, 100%. If I make enough to have more, take more of mine to give to them so that they can be me.
If you wanted 100%, Jody, 100%. If government, left or right, I don't care. If you want to tie something to the rate of inflation, tie things like foster care families, fees, social welfare, parent checks that come in, family, that stuff, daycare
automatically costs, into your bank account. You don't have to juggle knives to get it. It just goes there.
You got to tie that stuff to the rate of inflation. You have to. Any government's funding, there needs to be a projection of what the rate of inflation might be, and it's fairly easy for economists to figure this stuff out roughly what the rate of inflation will come and go. And it's bad right now, but if you don't tie it to the rate of inflation for people who are on fixed incomes, senior citizens, this is a real problem. And you look at the welfare, $350 a month or something, and it's like ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, if you don't stop with the rental thing, focus on the money that you're giving out as opposed to punishing the private sector.
Correct. Boom. Now, one more thing before we have to wrap up, because we do this the fastest 30 minutes in bcpoli talk. Omicron vaccine rollout. It's happening. It's coming. 4th doses for most British Columbians because the uptake's been, I should say, most have had 2, right? 89% of British Columbians have had 2 doses, and then it kind of trickles down a little bit on the 3rd dose, but people are kind of getting up to speed on that. I've had 4. You've had 4?
3. But I had COVID in June, so I talked to Jason Tetro on CKNW, and I asked him, he said, no, you wait 6 months after you get COVID or after your last shot. 6 months. So I would be December for me.
So you're December, which is perfect because that's probably when your age group is coming up, because we're all preparing ourselves for another surge if it happens. Should be November, December-ish. And there's still super spreader events happening. Some of the most cautious people I know right now are testing positive and
I don't know anybody who hasn't tested positive in my network. Everybody's had it. Oh, yeah, right. I never see you, though.
It's weird.
I see you on a camera.
I know, but I never see anybody. I live in this bubble. This is where I live. But I will get the 4th dose I will get this bivalent booster dose when it is available to me. But I did roll up my sleeve because I had been an early
your math
vaccinated way back when. It had been 10 months since I'd had a vaccine. And I thought, okay, that's a long time. They keep talking about how if it's 6 months, you should be. I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay. So I went in. I'm a 4 Pfizer girl. And when I go in to get this, fine. I'm ready for it. I hope that everybody really does take a look around and understand the number of people who have now received the safe and effective vaccine, and that we are walking around basically normally here and in most first world countries because of this. Like, we're not through it, but we're very fortunate. And one last thing on the Twitter.
Yes.
I got a colonoscopy this week because my mom is a 2-time colon cancer survivor. So if you are one of those squeamish people.
I'm on the 5-year cycle myself.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was so easy, George. When
Were you awake?
First did my first one way back when, I was.
Yeah.
I was in and out in an hour and 3 minutes. I walked in. They sat me down, put that in, put the thing, here you go. I was like, okay. And then, okay, we're sitting you up. Okay, your person's coming to get you. I talked about it a little bit on social media because the hardest part was the fasting. I fasted for 5
We should be warning about this. The fasting. And then the liquid.
Fasting part. Not allowed to eat the seeds. And the liquid wasn't so bad because I'm on the smaller prep. So it was fine. But then I tweeted about it. And then
for me.
Charles Adler tweeted about it and said, something nice about me doing it. And I'm like, I think Katie Couric started this. And then Katie Couric retweeted me.
Wow.
I love her.
Fancy.
I love her.
I mean, but does Barack Obama follow you like he follows me? He's obsessed with me, Barack. My buddy Barack. Yeah.
Are we done here?
I didn't even know he followed me. I had to find out from one of my staff that he is? I didn't know that.
Well, he knows the cool people. Well, hook the girl up.
He's always retweeting me, and it's really embarrassing. He's got to get a life. He looks handsome in his picture, though, his portrait. I look forward to seeing what Trump might look at. Trump's will be interesting. It's going to be hard to find a portrait person willing to not make that look interesting.
Wow.
You gotta have something to work with.
See you next week, George.
Bye.